I used to think the sound of the percolator was a countdown, a ticking clock telling me I was already late for a life I hadn't quite lived yet. In those years, the kitchen was merely a transit station, a place of high-speed collisions between my briefcase and a scalding ceramic mug. I remember the way I'd vibrate with an artificial urgency, checking my watch while the coffee was still mid-drip, pouring it before the cycle was finished because I couldn't spare 3 minutes for the water to find its way through the grounds. I drank it standing up, eyes fixed on the driveway, my mind already 3 miles down the interstate, rehearsing arguments for meetings that no longer matter. I treated time like an enemy I had to outrun, a thief that was always gaining on me, never realizing that by sprinting toward the future, I was stepping right over the only parts of the day that were actually mine to keep. Now, I wait for the blue flame of the stove to take its time, watching the way it cradles the bottom of the mocha pot with a steady, unhurried heat. There is a specific rhythm to the way the water begins to hum, a low, metallic vibration that tells me the transformation has begun. I don't check my watch anymore. The sun hitting the ceramic tiles on the backsplash tells me all I need to know about the hour. I find myself mesmerized by the steam rising in a thin, translucent ribbon, drifting toward the window where the frost is just beginning to lose its grip. I used to hate this waiting, this quiet gap in the gears of the day, but now I see it as a form of prayer. It's the only time the world isn't asking anything of me, and for once, I've stopped offering up my peace as a sacrifice to the gods of productivity. Elena used to say that my life was lived in the blur between the front door and the ignition of the car, a series of brief stops on the way to somewhere else. She would sit at this very table, her hands wrapped around a hand-painted bowl of café con leche, watching me spin like a top in the center of the room. She moved through her mornings with a grace that felt like a rebuke to my chaos, savoring the smell of the toasted bread and the way the light caught the dust motes in the air. I used to tell her we didn't have time for the ceremony, that the world was moving too fast to sit and watch the birds on the feeder. She would just smile, that slow, knowing tilt of her head, and say that the world would still be there when the cup was empty. I spent 20 years trying to prove her wrong, only to find myself here, finally learning the language of the slow gesture. There is a specific kind of silence that lives in a house at 6 in the morning, and I've finally learned how to inhabit it without trying to drown it out. It isn't a lonely silence, though it took me a long time to distinguish between being alone and being still. In the quiet, I can hear the house settling into its bones, the faint creak of the floorboards and the distant, rhythmic call of a mourning dove in the oak tree. I carry the 2 mugs to the wooden table by the window, even though I know only one of them will ever reach a pair of lips. I set her cup down in the spot where the sunlight hits the grain of the wood. I sit down, and I don't pick up my phone. I just wait. Because Elena was right. The world will still be there when the cup is empty.